Good afternoon, veterans, and welcome again to another edition of Appreciating Veterans, especially on Sunday. Let me first thank American Legion Post 875 for allowing us to have this place, the Albert and Willie Lee Johnson Family Foundation, for their constant help and persistency in making sure that this program can be broadcast. Also, we'd like to thank AMVETS Post 34. And without further ado, veterans, I would like to introduce you again to Mr. Michael Kissinger. Mr. Kissinger, welcome again. Thank you very much for being here. We're going to be talking today, veterans, about employment. I know there are a lot of veterans coming back from the war who are unemployed and who are looking for work. And what Mr. Kissinger has done, first we're going to let him explain to us exactly what it is that he does do and why his passion for helping veterans is so abundant right now. Mr. Kissinger.
Well, basically what I do is I help veterans, whether they're Vietnam veterans or whether they're veterans that have recently been separated, find jobs. What we also do is we end up having veterans go through different type training programs that we pay for, so that way they don't have to use their GI Bill until they're actually ready to go to college or do whatever it is they want to do. The next thing that we do is we work with employers to hire veterans. In the course of doing that, most veterans take the wrong approach. So what we do is we set up a system that allowed a veteran to get a job within 30, 60, or 90 days, as opposed to the 40 weeks that the Department of Labor indicates that takes. So there's a lot of things that we go through that process. And in order to do what I just said, I'm affiliated with Swords to Plowshares, which is here in San Francisco. I worked with Vietnam Veterans of California, which covers the state. We also
what would you say that was?
Vietnam Veterans of California. And we have an entity called CASVA, which is basically tied the state together. So depending on where you're located as a veteran, what we do is we can either have you contact that specific location and have them work with you in order to get a job or do whatever.
And CASVA, what does CASVA stand for?
It's basically 5 different veterans organizations throughout the state of California. And I don't know exactly what all those. But what they do is there's one in San Diego, there's one in LA, there's Swords up here in San Francisco, there's Vietnam Veterans of California here. A lot of the veterans
are somewhat familiar with Swords to Plowshares. I know I am, because they've helped me in many ways since I've been here in the city. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to ask you, first of all, you said something about training programs before the veterans get to use their GI Bill. Can you go into a little bit about what the programs these are and how do they affect their veterans coming back from wartime?
Okay, basically what we've come to find out is, we do a lot of different research on the issue, but what we've come to find out is that depending on what type of veteran you are, let's say that you don't know exactly what you want to do. I remember when I came back from the service, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and so I became a carpenter. And what we find out is that the veterans that come back, they think that they want to go to college. They decide that they want to go to one school or another, and there's a lot of different schools out there that want the veterans to spend their money or to spend their GI Bill with them without actually doing an assessment of what they're best qualified to do. So what we do with a veteran is we'll sit down with a veteran, we'll say, okay, we'll create an employment development plan or sort of a life plan for that veteran and decide exactly what's the best thing for you to do. And then we look at what's happening with you. Through Swords, we will turn around and have you enter into a training program. Let's say you want to go into a solar energy training program, you want to become a truck driver, you want to end up becoming a security officer based on what it is you're best qualified to and what your MLS was.
And do you also use these along with the rate or what they've been doing on OJT and this type of thing too?
Well, what we try to do is we plug into that. Now, there's lots of reasons why veterans should be hired. The interesting part is that most veterans don't know how to sell or convert their MOS into a sellable commodity.
I understand.
So that way they can actually go to work within a job that they want. The reason that we set up the training programs the way we set them up is primarily to be able to make sure that the veteran selectively chooses what he wants to do and develop a career. So when I look at a veteran's resume, for instance, a lot of the veterans, especially if they're older veterans, have participated in a lot of entry-level type jobs, and they haven't had the direction or the course of saying, okay, let's establish a career, or let's establish a small business, or let's figure out what we want to be, maybe 10, 15, 20 years down the line. So what we do is we say, okay, Where are you? What is it you're best qualified to do? What is it that you want to do? And how can we meet the dreams and goals that you have for your lifetime? Because this is what we need to lay out for you. Once we do that, then we can provide them with a plan that allows that to happen. And as a result of doing that, they reach the goals that they want to reach.
Okay, well, Michael, let's talk a minute about winning this employment game. Why this program now for U.S. military veterans? Why now?
Well, actually, it's a program. If you look at what's happening with the program, there's roughly 1 million vets that are unemployed. The 25% of the veterans who basically served in the military are living on the street. If you look at the wages that the veterans receive as a result, or in comparison to their counterparts, for instance, if you have a bachelor's degree, you roughly pay $10,000 less. If you don't have a degree, you're paid about $6,000 less. So there's reasons why you start looking at winning the employment game as an opportunity for veterans to really take control of their life, as opposed to somebody who is just drifting. And what I find out with the older vets is they've gone through a process to where they've just drifted. And the idea was to end up taking those veterans and say, well, look, you've served your country, you've done a lot, we thank you for your service, but at the same time, there has been nobody there to really give you the guidance and the counseling that you need in order to be able to get to the place that you want to get to.
And what is the financial outlook now of most people? Not only veterans, but for most people.
Well, this is sort of amazing because I wrote this up because we were using it, and 58% of Americans right now have a job. Only 58%. 56% of most Americans are only covered by employer insurance. The median wage for America right now is $26,261.
Median. Ooh,
median.
That's the average?
That's the average. You know, people think that there's lots of money that's being made out there and people are really doing well. But, you know, you start looking at veterans, how many veterans really have gone to college? You know, if you go to college, you're basically making $40,000. If you have a master's degree, you're making $69,000. But you look at where the veterans really are, they have not really been able to plug education into what they're trying to do because they haven't really established a life plan. So let's say you look at the average American household now in America has about $75,600 in debt. Or you start looking at what's happened with, since 2007, Americans now have $7.7 trillion. They're poor as a result of that. As far as most people are concerned, 50% of all Americans now own just 2.5% of all the wealth in the United States.
That's bad.
That's absolutely bad. I mean, and the reason for that is because there's lack of education on how to make money in America. There's lack of understanding of why you need to have a small business. There's lack of understanding of what you really have to produce for an employer to get a higher wage. According to one study, 21% of all children in the United States were living below the poverty line in 2010. Or today, there's more than 44 million Americans on food stamps, and nearly half of them are children. According to Newsweek, close to 20% of all American men ages 25 to 54 do not have a job. You know, so
at this moment.
At this moment. So what you're looking at as a veteran is you're looking at a very unique individual who's been trained to be able to reach a target, who's been trained to do certain types of jobs, who is basically trained because of his military training and experience to excel far beyond the average American. So we're looking at vets in America and we're saying, okay, why do we have 1 million vets that are unemployed? Why do we have vets that are going to programs that are not helpful? Why are we sending vets to college? And this is one of my big peeves, is that 16% of all, when you get out of college, 2 years after you get out of college, between 14 and 16% actually work within the college degree that they have. So all these things impact vets, and they impact vets in such a way to where the vet has not been properly counseled on how to achieve his career goal or his life goal, so that way he is in the top 5% of America.
But you know, Michael, obviously the job market has changed a lot. You know what I'm saying? In response to the economy. You know, we have this stimulus package, and we have stimulus this and stimulus this, and we're bailing out people here and we're bailing out people there. Okay, but just how is it today, job market? What's new about it today?
I think the job market is more of a newspaper radio game. If you really understand what happens with the job market, at least from some of the experts that I've listened to and spoken to, there's roughly 44 million jobs that are changed every year in America.
When you say change, what aspect you mean?
Well, what happens is you got a job right now, you decide that you want to go work someplace else.
Oh, okay.
So if there's 44 million jobs where people are basically changing what it is that they're doing, and this is a constant, and you look at what the Department of Labor tells you, that it's going to take you 40 weeks, 38 weeks to find a job, there's really something wrong. Now, being a veteran and being smart about what you have to do, when I was in the service, I was a Green Beret. So what do they teach you how to be? The best. When you're in the military, they're teaching you how to be the best. They teach you how to accomplish a plan. They teach you what it is to end up taking over whatever it is you have to do. It's the same thing as a civilian. When you come out of the military as a civilian, you have to look at it as a battle plan. And you have to say, this is what I have to do to achieve whatever objective it is that I want to achieve. And how am I going to do that? And so by doing that, you start finding out that entities like SWORDS or entities like Vietnam Veterans of California, you know, whatnot, are really trying to get veterans to understand that there is a system and a procedure here where you can beat the average American on the block. Just by using your military skills to do that.
And what are some of the first things that a veteran should do when he gets back if he wants to make himself available for the job market? You know, how do a veteran sell himself to an employer? You know, things of that nature.
Well, let's say you come back from the military and you're looking for a job. The easiest way to do it is when I went to USF, they tested me to find out what I was best qualified to be. Now you can even listen to that test. And so when I came back, they told me that I needed to be a psychologist and so on and so forth. I got an A on that portion of the test. Then on the other side of the test, they turned around and they tested me and they said, okay, you should not go in construction and you should not go into law. Well, needless to say, those were the two things I got an F on, and so those were the two things that I did. So the reality is that when you first come back from the military, especially, you know, if you look at most guys come back, they're anywhere from 22 to 28 years old, they have not really been tested to find out what they want to do, nor have they ever sat down and decided what type of life skills they need to get what they want. For instance, if they want the house, they want the car, they have the wife, they have the kids. If you start looking at that in dollar value, how much is this really going to cost you to have that, and then decide what type of job that you want, what you find out is you've set yourself up in a position, so let's say it's going to cost you $100,000 to live, or maybe $200,000 or $5,000 or whatever your number is. Well, if you start looking at the job market, you start looking at, should I go to work or should I be trained or go to college to do something? Well, let's say that you decide you want to be a psychologist and they pay you $24,000. Well, that is not going to give you what you need if you need $500,000. Maybe you need to start a small business. So rather than going to college that limits you to something that you think is going to be off the top of your head you want, what you're looking at is the marketplace and saying, okay, in the marketplace to make 500 grand or 100 grand, this is what I have to do. And you start looking at the plan that you create for yourself based on what you really want, as opposed to what you're just getting a job. Because most guys come back and say, well, I need a job. The reality is you don't need a job right away. You need to have a plan of action that allows you to get what you want in your lifetime.
And how does a veteran, I mean, in other words, what is value creation as it applies to veterans coming back, using that experience that they have to make them valuable to an employer?
Well, most veterans, if you talk to most military-friendly hiring employers, all veterans are valuable. The issue is, have you learned as a veteran how to sell that value to another employer?
Is that the same as saying that your self-worth as what you've been trained in, or your MOS per se? Or what values specifically are you talking about?
Okay, I'm an employer, and you're a veteran and I want to hire you. Now, what do I have to make in order to be able to hire you? I have to make money. Now, if you look at Google, for instance, and I pay you $100,000 a year to work for me, you need to make $1.3 million for me if I'm going to keep you on my payroll. If you are a regular employer, the average number is you need to make 3 to 1. So if I'm going to pay you $50,000 a year, you need to make me $150,000 a year. When we get into value here, depending upon what you do and what type of skills you have, we need to know as employers what you can do for us. Most veterans and most people in America say, what can that employer do for me? And the reality is, if you look at everybody who's out there, why do you have 12%, 10%, 9.7% unemployment? You have unemployment because that persons that are in that unemployment line have not really looked beyond themselves to say, what makes me employable to that employer? Once you start looking at money, how many employers are going to turn you down and say, look, I'm really good at doing what I'm doing. I'm willing to work for you on a trial basis. I'm willing to turn around and put my mouth and my money where my action is. If I make you a 13-1 return on investment, are you going to hire me? If I make you a 3-1 return on investment, if I guarantee what it is that I'm going to do, I now become valuable because I've created value for the employer. And America is based on creating value, not on creating the things that is in the newspaper and on the magazines.
Are we listening, veterans? He's giving us some very, very exciting information here. What can you tell us, Michael, what is the #1 job interview mistake that veterans make? Not only veterans, but Americans in general. What is the #1 mistake that they make?
Basically, the thing that most people do is they always think about me.
Me first.
Me, the veteran.
Well, you know, that's what we're taught.
As opposed to the employer.
You got to look out to me first, right?
But when you're looking and you're going into an employer, you're saying, look, I want to go to work for you, right?
Okay.
So the question is why?
Okay.
Well, you come in as a veteran and you're saying, well, I want to go to work for you because I need a job. The employer's saying, why should I hire you?
Yeah.
Well, the reason I hire you is because you're going to make me money. You've been highly skilled. You have special skills that most people have. You're dedicated. You're motivated. And you are a person who's been trained by the U.S. military to excel and do it with leadership skills and everything that you have. So this is what we want out of you.
Right. So the interview is not about me. It's not about me at all. It's about you. Okay. Okay.
Even though,
did you hear that, veterans?
And this is a problem. Most veterans and most people that go out to get a job, they think that interview is about them. It's got nothing to do with them. What their responsibility to do is to say, look, I've researched your company. I know what you're looking for. I know how to make some money for you. I know how to help you. And if you hire me, this is what I can do for you.
Right.
Now, the other part about that is when you turn around and you walk in there and you say that, how do you think you compare with everybody else that's sitting there? Those guys, the normal person on the block is not doing that.
Right.
And if they did, the employers could say, when do you want to get started? Because I want to see you working for me.
Exactly.
And until that happens, it's just not going to work for most people come back.
And briefly, can you give us a few more problems that we have during the interview time? I mean things that you can think of right off the top of your head.
Problems that you have with the veterans that I've been working with and whatnot, is they don't understand the process. When you decide that you want to, say, get married, right?
Okay.
You turn around and you look for a person, you say, okay, well, are you looking for sex? Or are you looking for a long-term relationship? If you're looking for a long-term relationship in a marriage or in a relationship with an employer, the guy wants you to know something about the company.
Right.
So how many people actually sit down and do the research for the company to say, hey, I know something about you. I've checked you out in Dun & Bradstreet. I've read your website. I've read your materials. I know what clients say about you. I've looked at you on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, or LinkedIn. I really know what you need. And the guy was sitting there saying, well, if you know what I need, how are you going to help me get it? Because everything that you do as a veteran or everything you do as an employee, you've got to prove to that person that you can get them what you want. So they don't really do the research on the company. Okay. They tend to do what everybody else does, and that's
just
throw
play
their
it by
resume
ear.
out, play it by ear. There's no battle plan to get that job.
Okay. All right. Well, that can be very frustrating. That can be very frustrating for veterans, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean, we would love for you to, to come in and give us a seminar or something like that for the veterans who come here every week. And veterans, that's something that we're going to try to get Michael to do for us. I'm sure that if he can, he will. But back to our interview. If in the job search itself, I mean, when you say that companies are downsizing now, they're not hiring as many people, they're laying off people because of the economy. If a veteran is unemployed and he doesn't know his skill set or his value set, how does he become an entity in the job market? Is he lost? I mean, do you throw up his hands or what?
Well, no, what happens is there's a lot of entities that, such as EDD, such as Swords of Plowshares, such as Vietnam Vets of California. What we try to do is to train you so you know what your value really is in the marketplace. We want you to understand that as you go through this process, it doesn't make any difference how many people get laid off. People are getting laid off because they're not producing value. When you look at the value that you can create for a company or for an entity, and you walk in there to the door, how many people are going to say, no, I don't want you? Another thing that happens with a lot of veterans, and with people generally, is because they're not willing to put their money where their mouth is and put themselves on the line to prove that they can do what they do. If I walk in and I say, well, look, I've read Napoleon Hill's book, and Think and Grow Rich. I know that if I sit down with you and I say, look, I will work for you for a day, a week, or a month, and I'm willing to have you test me to find out if I'm as good as I am when I say I am. And if I don't do it, I'm willing to pay you for whatever supervision time that you've had over me. How many people do you think are going to say no? Now, that was an idea that was brought about in 1928, but that same idea applies today. So when you look at different employers, or you look at what you have, or you start trying to meet that value-added quality within that company, you now have a much better approach to get a job. So the guys that are getting laid off, the illusion here is, where are the jobs going? They're sending them out of the country because it's cheaper to send them out of the country. But what is the real significant thing that you can do for the company once you analyze that company and you find out what they want? Once you do that, and you don't care about the bad jobs, you want to put yourself in a good job.
Exactly. So what about, I mean, a lot of the veterans that come back from overseas, and a lot of veterans that get out of the service, the first thing they do is go back to school. They feel like that they have to go back to school to compete for a job. Do you agree with that? Or what do you think about it?
I don't think it's good to go back to school once you get out of the military. It's not that I'm against school, because I taught at 3 universities for 16 years in PhD programs and whatnot. The issue for a veteran is to say, okay, by going to work and getting a job, I can now find out what's happening in the marketplace. I can find out whether I like what I'm doing or not. Rather than picking up some sort of a degree or just going back and satisfying a school requirement, you find out that there is a lot more for you. Plus, another thing that happens, since I've had my own business and since I taught business in different colleges, what I found out is that when you go and you take business programs in colleges and schools, that's not necessarily training you to be a business owner. Today, you have to start thinking like a business owner. You've got to realize that the business is you, Inc., that you are there as an independent contractor working for that company to say, this is what I'll do for you. And if you can't do it, you're just like everybody else. You're gone.
So before we go, Michael, there's a couple other things I wanted to ask you. I know that a lot of the veterans, a lot of the groups that you're affiliated with, that help veterans. What would you say to the veterans that are listening today that they need to do first? What are their first battle plans? If they don't have a battle plan, where would they need to go to start a battle plan?
Since my favorite is really Swords and Plowshares, or entities like that are really veteran helping organizations. You need to go to those organizations, whether they're EDD or one-stop center and whatnot, and sit down with a person who is a veteran, talk to that person and find out how they can really help you. As a result of creating what I refer to as an employment development plan or a life plan, you'll start filling in the pieces. You'll start finding out exactly what you need. You'll start looking at where you can find the different affiliations or associations that we deal with at Swords in order to be able to do that.
So you're saying that there is a solution for the unemployed veteran.
There's a total
There is a solution for the veteran who has, say, some type of barrier on there. And you say these entities are able to help them in that respect.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that happens is I was working with putting veterans to work that had felonies. And so by being able to be mentored by somebody that can actually help you, you find out that if you send your resume to, say, a major corporation, they're going to do a background check.
Of course.
So as a person that's going to be doing a background check, if you want to be a vet that has a felony, that's going to say no. So you start getting the right information on how to have that apply for you. What happens is you start saying, okay, suppose you work for a smaller company. Suppose you work for companies that don't do extensive background checks. Suppose you come in within an area of work that you might not necessarily like at the beginning here, but it will allow you to start making some money so you can take care of yourself. So there's ways to work the system, so to speak, that allows you to go to work, allows you to get employed, allows you to create a plan of action that gets you exactly what you want.
Understandable. And small business startup. Tell me a little bit about small business startup.
There's a small business startup, there's all sorts of things across the board. So if you're looking at it, one of the things that we did is we created Profit Builders Inc., which is a website on prosperitybreakthroughsforyou.com. It's geared toward starting a business for veterans. It's geared toward having veterans who already have businesses grow their businesses better. It's for showing people how to create online businesses and how to do various networking type businesses. So that way you have something that's solid. And what we normally recommend is that if you decide that you are going to want to start a business, like 85% of the guys that are coming back now want to do, you need to talk to somebody that knows exactly what they're doing. And in that process, you need to be tested. It's the same as looking for a job. If you're looking for a job and you have somebody assess you to find out where you are, it's the same way with starting a business. You want to be assessed to say, okay, this is a good business or a bad business for me. And then you can start saying, okay, which one do I want to do? But with the way all the stuff is coming out now, with all these bogus home-based business type things, you want to be able to make sure that you're choosing the best. You want to check in with the Better Business Bureau.
Right,
you're going to want to end up looking and do some real search on the net and whatever.
So those are the three workforce sectors that you divided the job market into, like the traditional, your non-traditional, and your entrepreneurial. This is what you're talking about in general.
Exactly.
Do you feel that a lot of the veterans coming back have set goals, or they have no goals, or they just don't know how to get to where they want to get?
Well, I think it depends on the educational background of the particular vet. Most vets that come out of the military right now have basically only a high school degree.
Okay.
And so they say, well, we're going to go to college because the old rule was, you need to go to college, you need to spend 20 years working for a company, you're going to get a gold watch. Well, the reality in today's economy is you need to end up thinking about where you want to go, and that principle doesn't apply anymore. So if you're a veteran who wants to go to work for somebody, well, you need to create a plan for that. If you're a veteran who wants to start your own business, well, that's a different issue, but you have to identify exactly who you are. Also, a big thing that comes out of this is most people who do not go to college, a lot of them have never been, a lot of the millionaires have never been to college.
Okay.
What they've done is they have looked at experts who taught them how to build a business, how to identify exactly what they want, and it's those people that become very successful because they don't have the risk. It's like when you come back, let's say you're not married. Well, you could take the risk as a non-married person and be very successful starting your own business. However, if you have a wife and kids, well, that's not really a good idea, maybe.
Well, Michael, we're just about out of time, and there's a couple things else I want to ask you. First, I want to ask you if you would come back and maybe do a seminar for some of our veterans that are here on Sunday afternoons, here where we do our feeding at the War Memorial Building. We would love for you to come back and maybe just sit down or tell the guys or show the guys how to get their resume started, put them in the right value perspective, as you put it, and give them some kinds of ideas of jobs and places that they can go. First, I want to ask you if you would do that.
Absolutely.
There you go, veterans. Come down and check Michael out. Also, the last word. I'll give you the last word. Tell us what you want us to know. That's for the veterans.
Basically, as far as the veterans, what I want them to know is America really appreciates what they do.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. And there you have it. Thank you for another time, another day. Veterans, remember, you can write to me at Robert Williams, 401 Van Ness Street, Suite 123, here in San Francisco, California, 94102. There you have it, veterans. Thank you.
You're welcome.